industry stories. B.Woods, what's popping with you? Knocking this podcast out the damn park, and I hope you are enjoying it so far. You're probably not, because it's only 4 episodes in, so it probably sounds pretty shitty. However, we are going to work through it. The industry podcast. No, I'm kidding. The first few episodes, if you listen to anybody's podcast, it sounds like utter trash. And then like 6 months in, that's when it starts to really hone in and sound very, very just averagely 7-ish. So thank you for listening. My name is B.Woods, and we do industry stories about just the meat and potatoes of what goes into this business we call entertainment. And my background is radio. I worked in terrestrial radio, the stuff that you listen to on the radio, in your car and all that. And I've been in the business for almost 15 years now. So there's like a million stories. And if you listen to the other podcast, kind of gives you a little more background into who I am. And so we left off on the last podcast, and I was talking about Mr. Ryan Seacrest. And so it's so interesting. Just to kind of give you a little bit of recap. So got fired from my last station, entered into Clear Channel, which is iHeart now. Somehow got onto a morning show, and there we are in a morning show with, it's literally 0 to 100, and I had not too much experience, but I knew what it took to get people to at least pay attention to me, and it worked on the radio. Reason why I brought up Ryan was just because what was interesting in the Clear Channel / iHeart building was just that you had so many literally like personalities, people like these huge personalities that were kind of walking around, and with personalities there's always just egos also. So everybody was kind of like fighting to be the most interesting person in the hallway. And one of the soft-spoken people that was in the building, it was a guy named Ryan Seacrest. And so he was at, if I believe so long ago, I think it was 98.7, which was like an alternative rock station or something like that. And at the time, Fox was giving away reality shows to a lot of radio personalities, and most of them generally failed. They didn't do too good. And so I know Valentine, he did one which was called like Married to America. I think the premise was something to where you meet somebody and the audience votes if they should get married, and it tanked. And so Fox was really just trying to get these shows off the ground and using radio personalities for hosts, and they almost got to the point to where it would almost do you a disservice to host one of these shows, because it would only be on for a few weeks, and then it'd get canceled, and people would just make fun of you and call you a loser, and nobody wants that. So Ryan was just kind of this invisible personality, and a show called American Idol is offered. And so, as legend tells it, that hosting position was kind of floated around the station, and nobody really took it, or their agents didn't push for them to take it, and Ryan took it. And so, if you go way back when, there was 2 hosts on American Idol. It was a guy named Brian Dunkleman, and it was Ryan Seacrest. And so, lo and behold, this show called American Idol it takes off. It takes off. I think it's even still on the air right now, and it just changes the trajectory of Ryan Seacrest's career. I mean, this was the biggest show. I mean, at the time, it was like the biggest show ever. I mean, you had every, like, Kelly Clarkson and Fantasia and all these big personalities that just came out of this show. and there was two hosts, and they got rid of Brian Dunkelman. I don't know what he's doing now, but Ryan like took on the face of this huge TV show. And with that being the case, he became the biggest personality at iHeart. And so originally at the time, so I was on this morning show, and we've been doing it for a few, maybe a year and a half at this point. And so Clear Channel actually wanted to give Valentine the morning show for Kiss FM Los Angeles. That's like the biggest thing that you can have. Kiss Los Angeles. I mean, you're really, at the time, that's like the biggest deal ever. That's like the best gig that you want to have. And so they were promising Valentine this morning show. And so we were all excited, which meant that he would go from afternoons to mornings, and we would join him, and we would be the successor to Rick Dees in the morning, because Rick was going out the door. And so, of course, iHeart, they made the decision. They said, you know what? We're not going to give Valentine the morning show. Guess who got the morning show for Kiss FM? Dun, 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 dun. Mr. Ryan Seacrest. He becomes the morning show. They give him another TV show on Fox. I mean, he's firing on all cylinders. And so Valentine, he was salty about that, because I guess they promised him something. And so it always felt like when Ryan, and we taped, our studio wasn't too far from the Kiss studio, but Ryan, he would do his actual morning show somewhere else, and every so often, like, he'd be in the building, but Valentine always just had like this salty vibe toward Ryan, because there was like obviously resentment, because he felt like, yo, you took my gig. And so, but what I do remember about Ryan was always sharp. He was sharp. He would come in, and he would take inventory of who was in a room, remember their names, and he was on top of it. He didn't waste time. He was always moving around the office. He always had like 3 people running behind him, and he knew when to turn it on and when not to turn it on. And so so he would come in, even on our show. We were still doing our syndicated show, and he would go from station to station, because not only was he an on-air personality, but he was like this national figure. So he was allowed to do interviews on other stations to cross-promote American Idol. So he would come into for us, and he would just tell us the latest updates of who's on American Idol and blah blah blah. And me and Brian, we would get into it. We would go back and forth, and he liked my energy and he liked my vibe. And at a certain point, one of his producers, they asked me, would you want to be a part of Ryan's radio show? And I knew that since Valentine gave me my first gig in radio, in terms of an on-air personality, I didn't want to be disloyal to him. And plus, I'm a kid from South Central also, so this loyalty, especially, I didn't know about the fuckery of how the business worked. I didn't know you take your opportunities, you move with them, you move a certain way in this business. I was coming into the Los Angeles radio world, especially a crossover rhythmic, this corporate world, kind of with still like a street mentality, because I knew, like, growing up, like where I was at, I wasn't in South Central at the time, but I grew up in that energy. There was and that gang culture, and just you stand by your word, and if you didn't stand by your word, it was more not like loyalty, but like cats get killed for just not doing it. So I was never caught up in that life. I was always square, but my mentality toward that was always, I knew there was consequences by not standing by your word, and always just being a lawyer, just be a straight up dude, a straight up guy. And if somebody gives you an opportunity, don't fuck them over by going to somebody that they're not really messing with like that. So all that being said, I didn't take it, even though they kind of whispered in my ear, we think you're funny, I like your energy is fly. I always thought that would be some fucked up shit to, leave to leave Valentine's show and upgrade and go to Ryan Seacrest show. And when you find out in the business, sometimes you got to just do what you need to do because, long story short, I think moving forward, I think there's no mistakes, but when you in life, I think that there's only learning lessons. But loyalty is just not something that's really in this business. You probably meet maybe about 2 or 3 people that are actually like really straight up and down with you that become friends. But for the most part, especially here in LA, people are trying to get theirs. People are hungry and people are going to use you and people are going to get what they can get in order for them to get ahead. And that was kind of the situation with me and Val and the radio station for a lot of directions. And so these are industry stories. That's just how it goes. And there's no resentment, but there's learning lessons. And so we're going to go deeper into that. It's been a long day, so we're going to extend the show. A lot of these shows are like 10, 12 minutes, but we're going to upgrade it. But we're going to talk about loyalty in the business and loyalty in the game when it comes to the entertainment business on these industry stories. So B.Woods, holla back.